Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. I'm sure if you've listened to me talk about earnings in the past, if you watch those weekly earnings on the radar videos, then you know how much time, how much focus, how much work I put into game planning around earnings season, right? And you know, while I am very active like the 1 to 2 months when earnings are the busiest, it doesn't mean I'm always very active taking options into earnings. Okay, and you know, I, I feel like I try to stress this in the videos, like during the week when I'm talking about the setup and what the options are pricing. But I mean, really, risk to reward matters, right? When it comes to taking options into earnings, risk to reward matters. And if the reward, if the options aren't getting rewarded, then the risk might not be worth it, right? And that's like one of the main things to consider right now for this quarter, or at least up until this point. We aren't really seeing any of like those really substantial moves. We aren't seeing like the big payday for like the option plays, and if that continues to be the case, then I mean like that has to really factor into your game planning, right? Because why are you going to take the elevated risk into earnings when there's that element of surprise, and maybe like especially if it's like a pretty sharp move against your position, like the options can really take like a serious hit. So if the reward isn't worth the risk, then you have to question, is the risk worth it in the first place, right? So Facebook, Apple, Tesla, all three of them were reported after the close last night, and actually none of them moved enough to pay the option players, right? So from like a debit perspective, so like Facebook, right? Facebook, Apple. Let me pull up the Apple chart. We can talk about this. But from like an option debit perspective, like that's when you really need to question whether it's the setup, right? Like, am I not looking at the right thing? Like Apple, I felt was like kind of extended into earnings. Tesla, I felt was kind of extended into earnings, right? So like those, I'm not too surprised. They're a little bit more like sell the news. Facebook, I thought was a slightly better pattern, and the fact that it really didn't move a ton, maybe a little bit more surprising to me, just based off like the overall chart, the history of moving, etc. But when I start to screen and I see like take a look, see what's working, what's not working, and if like patterns like stocks that historically move aren't really moving, then that's usually when I start to maybe pump the brakes a bit, right? But outside of actually taking options into earnings, what you could look at is the ramp into the reports, which I talked about just recently, right? Looking for moves ahead of time. So even if they're not moving on the earnings, sometimes I'll move ahead of earnings, right? And then looking for trades right after earnings because, yeah, maybe they just don't want to pay option players, right? And then like the 2, 3 days after earnings, or like the 2 weeks after earnings, the stock has an incredible move. So if they're not working on earnings, then we can look for trades before, we can look for trades after. But it's just seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and if the options aren't getting rewarded for the risk into the print, then maybe we just don't take the risk into the print, right? Look for trades outside of that. Uh, so it's just something I've been noticing, and I want to put it out there on your radar. Just if you are focused on earnings as well, I mean it's just something I'm starting to see, and I tried to communicate in the VTF. But hopefully still got a lot of earnings season left. Hopefully things open up a bit. But if they don't, we're gonna still find opportunities in other areas. All right. So, if you like this video and you're looking for more information about how I trade earnings, or with options, or how I swing trade options, please follow up with the link in the description of the video for more information on options play. Hope you have a wonderful night. Stay well, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.